What's good? It's your boy Fanon. All right, man. I'm going to talk about Terrence Crawford. I'm going to talk about Bo Mack, and I'm going to talk about Bob Arum and Al Haymon in this video. And I just knew when I woke up this morning, I was going to see a bunch of videos about what Bob Arum said about Al Haymon. And I was shocked. Nobody picked up the story that I saw, other than, I do believe, Pheno Boxing. Now, before I go into that and the other articles that I heard other people leave about Terrence Crawford and the Charlo brothers fights, let me thank you guys for subscribing. I appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, hey, you're invited to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can be notified when we release more videos and when we do the live streams. And thank you to everybody that supports the channel. It is very, very much appreciated. Although I have a suspicion that I'm going to lose some of y'all on this video. So it was nice to know you. The reason why I started doing videos with the LDBC and why I started doing videos in originally YouTube videos at all is that I see so much bad press for black fighters in America. And whenever you go to East Side Boxing or you go to Max Room Boxing or whatever, you just get inundated with a bunch of really terrible is the only way to describe the treatment that you would get for supporting a black fighter. Then when the PBC came about after Floyd Mayweather Jr. left Top Rank and started dealing with Oscar De La Hoya, and then left Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar De La Hoya is somebody else that lost Top Rank, left Top Rank. You know, I started hearing about Al Haymon. And one of the things that came out when Bob Arum sued Al Haymon, claiming that he was trying to that he was being a promoter when he wasn't really a promoter, despite the fact that that's exactly what Showtime and HBO and DAZN and all these guys are doing, but yet nobody's suing them for being in actuality being promoters and skipping over the requirements of the Ali Act. But hey, you know, since it's somebody that's paying a lot of money, there's no need to say anything about that. However, when Top Rank and Bob Arum sued Al Haymon along with Oscar De La Hoya, and I do believe that Kathy Duva might have been a party to that as well, when they were all, and back when Eddie Hearn was, you know, leaving his 2 cents in letting his 2 cents be known about the eventual failure of the PBC. I remember thinking to myself, man, these guys are sure loading up on Al Haymon mighty bad for doing nothing different than anybody else is doing. So yesterday, when Bob Arum referred to Al Haymon as the cancer of boxing, all through an interview, when he was talking about, I think he was asked about the Terrence Crawford fight with Errol Spence Jr., and he called Al Haymon the cancer. Go ask the cancer of boxing. 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 Let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard Bob Arum call Oscar De La Hoya a cancer? He usually doesn't have almost nothing negative to say about Oscar De La Hoya. He said a couple things about Eddie Hearn and how Eddie Hearn doesn't know the American boxing market. Couple things. I've never heard him get insult somebody that might have insulted like some reporters, but he continually called called Al Haymon the cancer of boxing. Similar to when, with the exception of the use of the N-word, when somebody that worked for Oscar De La Hoya, remotely worked for him, called him the Black Hitler, and how they were trying to run him out of the business. Everybody wanted, you know, hey man, he needs to issue an apology. He needs to issue an apology. But not a word about what Bob Arum has said that I can hear. But we believe everything this dude has to say about the fights he wants to make with Terrence Crawford, because the videos and the comments that I did see had to do with more of they skipped out on that part, but you believe when he says that he's trying to make a fight with Al Haymon. He calls a guy cancer in one breath, but then the other breath he says, why are you asking me about making the fight? Shouldn't you be calling the cancer of boxing, the cancer of boxing, the cancer of boxing? Now, is that overtly the same situation as it is with Oscar De La Hoya? No, it's not. But it clearly shows you that he is not in any hurry to work with Al Haymon because he does not like Al Haymon. He doesn't want to work with Al Haymon. But yet, some people will believe anything that comes out of the dude's mouth as long as this is the case when it comes out of his mouth. As long as it supports their argument. If it means that it helps them prove and put pressure on another fighter that they want to put fighter on, hey, they remember that. They're like, yep, that's what Bob Arum says. Bob Arum said he's willing to make this fight right now. It's only going to take 3 days. Bob Arum's putting the pressure on Al Haymon, the cancer of boxing, who he's not calling, who he's actively disrespecting, who he's filed lawsuits against in the past. All of a sudden, hey man, as long as what Bob Arum is saying fits the narrative that I'm pushing, hey man, it's all good. Bob Arum really wants it. I believe it's Bob Arum. I believe him. I mean, he's 80 years old. I mean, he knows that the time is now to make the fight. The time is now to make the fight, right? Because Bob Arum said it. But you conveniently skip that he sued that man, tried to shut his business down, called him the cancer of boxing like 5 or 6 times in the same interview that he talked about how they could make the fight with Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. It's amazing. It's amazing to me. I'm wondering, like, dude, what is going on with all of this, love for Top Rank that's going on here? Top Rank, Bob Arum, for example, Jamal Charlo's, walkover fight happens this weekend, right? I mean, comes out yesterday. It's going to happen in October. In January, right? Damn, I'm skipping in December. The fight's going to happen. I'm so pissed off about this ridiculousness. I can't say December. December. It's going to happen in December against Willie Monroe, right? So I do believe his last 2 fights would have been against Heeland and Willie Monroe. Now the PBC is falling apart. They're tearing apart Jamal Charlo's brand. It's a horrible job, right? Blah, blah, blah. And when I say blah, 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 I mean blah, 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 bullshit. Didn't Terrence Crawford just fight Jose Benavidez? Where were people stomping up and down when Bob Arum made that fight? Where were people? Are people jumping up? I heard is Canelo's brand being ruined, and should DAZN shut down because they're making Rocky Fielding? Did Gennady Golovkin's brand get ruined when he fought Selecki? Did Danny Jacobs' brand get ruined when he fought Luis Arias? I could go on for days and days and days about the walkover fights that are happening in boxing. And it's everybody is doing it. In boxing right now, it's the exception that somebody is actually willing to take a tough fight, like Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz. When Deontay Wilder said he was going to fight Luis Ortiz, I guarantee you most people thought the dude was nuts. Why would you take that chance? Why would you take that chance? That's the state of boxing. And that's no difference between the PBC doing it and Top Rank doing it and Golden Boy doing it and Main Events doing it. Shoot, the most competitive series of fights we have in boxing right now is the World Boxing Super Series, and they're mismatches until the semifinals. They're mismatched. The first round is all mismatches until you get to the quarterfinals. Then they match up and have to fight. But that's the only situation in boxing right now where that's happening. It's the only. People make excuses for bum fights left, right, front, and center. But somehow, within discussions that are happening between people that should know better, it's a reason why the PBC is failing. The PBC is falling apart. Man, look, Bob Arum called, this is what I care about. I care what Bob Arum says and what he really says. Bob Arum has not talked about making any good fights. I don't care what Bomac has to say. I don't care. Terrence Crawford doesn't say, but this is what I find real interesting too. Because this is how I agree with Bob Arum in this extent. People said, how come people keep putting pressure on me to answer questions about making the fight between Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence, but you don't ever hear anything from the cancer, Mr. Cancer. You don't hear anything from Mr. Cancer. Don't you think you should have to hear something from Mr. Cancer? Why do I have to do all the talking? Why is all the pressure on me making the fight? Shouldn't you have to talk to Mr. Cancer? Where have we heard that argument before? But between two boxers, one of which doesn't say a word ever, and the other one being held accountable for the words that he does say. Look, man, I love boxing. I try to be a proponent of American black fighters and the PBC because it's a black-owned business, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I believe that I love what they're doing over there to the extent that it shows people what you can do if you are focused, if people pool their resources, and they are the deepest and they are the best boxing organization in boxing. They are the best organization in boxing. Easy. From the quality of fighters that they have fighting with them to their propensity to make fights that are decent, that you want to see. The PBC and HBO and the Barclays Center were the best thing in boxing in 2017. They were the best thing in boxing in 2018. I'm not going to go out of my way to start every time Bob Arum says something about somebody, or you got another fighter that fights with Oscar De La Hoya or Bob Arum, that they don't get their way and you're a fan of them, that you got to go run off and try to tear down that organization. You can do it. I'm not going to do it. Because I don't believe that they're doing, number one, they're not doing anything they're not doing anything differently than Bob Arum, than Top Rank is doing. Matter of fact, you have a much higher likelihood of getting a good fight out of the PBC. There was no good Top Rank fights this year. None. We had one to at least 3 this year or 4 this year. Top quality, high level fights out of the PBC. The Top Rank didn't show any. Golden Boy showed 1. DAZN hasn't showed any. Matchroom hasn't shown. I guess maybe if you consider Dillian White and maybe Dillian White versus Joseph Parker. Maybe 1 if they've made 2. But actively stand in the way of the big ones. But hey, man, believe Bob Arum, man. Believe Bob Arum. Jesus, man. The dude that is on record from robbing from Muhammad Ali with Herbert Muhammad. That's the guy you believe, right? Anyway, it is what it is, and I'm out of here, man. Whatever. And if you don't like it, unsubscribe. Whatever. I'm out. Peace.